I posted something on Farcaster earlier this week because, well, first of all, I felt motivated to share a little bit more about myself. Interestingly enough, I am very good at, speaking about others positively, obviously, and the work that they do and the impact that they make and the projects that I contribute and the same thing for them, the impact that they make. But I personally find it very hard to talk about myself. I have no idea what that's about. As I continue to discover more about myself through this journey that I started about finding my why, hopefully I can uncover that and start working on that. Because I realize that not talking about myself actually is detrimental to not just, myself, but also to the work that I do, because I need to be talking about the impact that I've made retroactively and the work that I continue to do today to continue to make a positive impact in the world. So, with that said, I shared a cast on Farcaster early in the week, and I'm trying to find it here so I can go ahead and quote that best I can. But basically, what I said is, again, I can't seem to find that. There it is. So I basically said, after 6 years of building in Web3, founding four different businesses, having two exits, I've only started to discover, or I've only recently discovered my why. And I think that's a little for me that's interesting because if you know me outside of Farcaster and the work that I do, you probably would know that I advocate pretty strongly for the projects that I advise and support publicly to very clearly define their values, their vision and mission, because without those things very clearly defined, it's very hard for individuals, communities to be built, because there is nothing really to anchor people to the stories of these projects, right? So that's something that I talk about a lot. And for myself, being someone who's been, building different projects, businesses, you would think that this is something that I would have had written down somewhere a long, long time ago. But I've kind of been working uh, arbitrarily on what my my why is, right? Or what is my why? Which just really to more make it more clearly, my why is my purpose. My purpose for doing anything. And without having that purpose defined, it should be hard for me to find what projects I want to contribute to, what communities I want to be a part of, what investors to take on, because all of these things need to be in alignment to my purpose. Otherwise, it's going to be, it could cause an issue down the line, right? Where there is a misalignment in values. So I would say, I guess I took a few moments more than I would normally in a week to think about my purpose a little bit more concretely. And I guess I can talk about why I decided to take a little bit more time. And that is, I'm I'm building a new project. I'm building a new business right now, in addition to everything else that I do that I can get a little bit more into, in this discussion. And that is a software business. It's working with open data, so on-chain and off-chain data, to provision rewards based on retroactive contributions. So positive activities on a network, DeFi protocol, communities, Farcaster. Like that's really the purpose of this platform that I'm building. It's called Mosaic, and I've been finding myself, and this is, by the way, me being very, um, what's the word I'm looking for here? Um, I'm really opening myself up here because, again, this is something that I'm not normally used to doing. So I'm becoming very vulnerable. And I'm okay with that. But over the past couple of weeks, months, very recently, I've been finding myself less enthusiastic. I've been finding myself less motivated about the work that I was doing there. And I was like, why is that I'm suddenly feeling so drained? Why is it that I'm not feeling the same excitement for the work that I'm doing that I started with? And that's why I took that extra moment in the beginning of this week to say, try to understand, look back at like the things that you've done and the value that, the impact that you've made, and why is that? And it was only then that I was able to understand a little bit more clearly that there was a misalignment somewhere. And that isn't that the product is bad or that the people that I work with are not good. It's there was a misalignment in my role in that organization, in this project that I'm building. And so to me right now, I'm now trying to apply this purpose retroactively, but also looking forward to the business that I'm building, but everything that I do to make sure that I'm contributing in the best way possible in this ecosystem that I am fully subscribed to. What is that ecosystem? That is Web3, that is crypto powered products. I, since 2016, just to add a little bit of background there, I learned of Bitcoin. I learned of the technology that powers Bitcoin, and I got pilled. I just jumped deep in the rabbit hole. I started attending some of my local meetups. And in fact, the first Web3 business that I founded was with people that I met at that local meetup. So these are things that I hugely I believe in completely and have dedicated a lot of my life to. 6 years is a lot. It's longer than my daughter's been born. Uh, to build businesses and products to make the world a better place using this technology. So now that you've kind of heard a little bit about, I guess, why I was looking for my why, and I'll look through questions here too, by the way, because I did want to keep it as an AMA. So hopefully people, you're welcome to ask questions and I'll try to respond to those. And of course, bring you up to the stage too and chat about this and hear your thoughts. Um, I had scheduled about an hour for this, but I'm not quite sure if we'll be here the full hour. But I think this part of the conversation will take anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes. So bear with me and welcome Eureka John. Roll call here. Kusho, Obo One, Bill's Bright Future Guy. Thank you all so much for coming to my TED Talk, as they say. um, so a little bit about what helped me understand my purpose, my why, is to actually go really far back to moments in my life that have actually been formative to who I am today. And I actually went really far back. I went as far back as elementary school. And I try to think of those moments in time that still are so vivid in my mind that, in my opinion, because of that, uh, how fresh in my mind they have made an impact, and I do realize that they actually have influenced my opinion and my outlook of life and the work that I do. And I look back and I remember um, my kindergarten teacher, who was also my second grade teacher. I'm guessing by the time that I got to second grade, he had asked to be promoted to a different grade. My wife's a teacher, so I know that happens a lot. And then I remembered my high school teachers. And I remember these names, by the way, like extremely vividly. Mr. Stong was my kindergarten and second grade teacher. Miss Wolf was my history teacher in high school, Miss Gibbs, social science, and Miss Woods, math class. And why do I remember these people? And I guess if I, oh, Mr. London was my yearbook teacher. I should add him there too because it's fresh in my memory in terms of like the impact he made in my life. And really, each of these educators worked with in entirely different ways, right? I mean, we're talking about kindergarten, second grade, high school, which is everything from ninth to 12th grade, and they were all in different subjects in high school. But the thread or the similarity or the impact that they made with me and to my life and resonates with me and has been influential to me is primarily that they were incredible listeners, that they provided subjective, or should I say, excuse me, objective opinions. I think that is, by the way, as a teacher, incredibly hard to do because a lot of times we have to be a good educator, and this is my thought, you have to be able to consume information, digest that, and regurgitate that in a way that makes sense to you. So it becomes, in a way, your bias could potentially influence that, which then makes it subjective, right? But I remember each of these individuals teaching in very objective ways. And the best way to kind of prove that is that they asked a lot of questions. They uh, listened and responded based on your own response, right? So it became subjective to you because you were kind of influencing um, that that the responses that they were giving you. So that's one. The other, of course, and probably goes even further than my kindergarten teachers, my parents. I grew up in a working class family, not middle class, lower class, and so we didn't really have much. I'll tell you some of my favorite toys my dad found in the trash. Okay, like this is me revealing a lot about myself, just to also paint a picture as like how poor we were. But my parents were always supportive of me and my curiosity and tinkering. I remember breaking my dad's radio when I was, I want to say, probably like 8 or 9, taking it apart and him encouraging me to put it back together instead of getting mad at me, which I don't know. It's very hard to say you wouldn't get mad, uh, especially when you don't have much and you don't know if you can afford another one. And I put it back together and it worked. I remember that. And they celebrated me. The same thing with anything else that I did, they were highly supportive. So these individuals early in my life helped me to understand that it is important to listen. It is important to be supportive of ideas and things that are important to someone else where you might not think that they're necessarily that important to you. Um, and to be a facilitator, to facilitate any resource you can to help people, uh, become better. And I would say my parents certainly did. Those early educators certainly did. I mean, I could even go down to college and think about a few names that I could pick out that were highly influential and supportive. So as I discover my own history, I try to think about then the work that I've done and the businesses that I've built. And one of the first businesses that I built in the tech space was an IT consultancy, an agency, if you will. And I found success because actually from very interesting ways. My employer, who had been my employer for 3 years, accidentally fired me. I don't know if that's the terminology, but I was asking for working less hours. So what I would here in California would be considered the minimum number of hours necessary to be a full-time employee, because I had just recently, my wife had recently given birth to our first kid, and I wanted to spend more time at home. And I'd gotten used to the father time off, whatever that's called, paternity leave, I think. And the next email I got was an email where I was CC'd with everyone from the office that said, "Let's celebrate Humpty on his last day this Friday." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's not what I meant, but sure, roll with it." They eventually became my first client, which I ended up making more money as a consultant than I was as an employee. And I took on half a dozen clients after that. So I was obviously making more than I was initially. And then eventually I sold that business and I came into Web3. And then my first Web3 business was eventually acquired too. So to say that I've found people who, in their own way, have been supportive and facilitators to my success. And I see someone in the audience. Welcome, Aaron. I see someone in the audience, Eureka John, who hopefully can uh, advocate for this being true. We'll see. I started Crypto Sapiens earlier, well, 2 years ago, as an experiment to create a podcast beyond a series that I hosted on Clubhouse, together with the support of a community, Bankless DAO. And we've been since getting the support. They've been our main patron, meaning they provide grants. Those grants are used to produce the podcast by hiring people from the DAO and paying them in the grants and tokens that we receive from them. And the one thing that just excites me about Crypto Sapiens and the work that I do there is the ability to facilitate experience, knowledge, skills to contributors who want to come in and do work that they're interested in but might not be professionals in, and facilitate a platform to builders and founders and developers who are creating products that are important to them and hopefully to the larger ecosystem. And it's this relationship of being a facilitator that really struck me as I was looking for my why and trying to define that why. So, with that, my why, my purpose, as I've defined it now, and I'm trying to refine this, and maybe through this conversation I can get there, is to empower individuals and organizations to become the best version of themselves. That's my why. That's why that's my purpose in driving lots, if not all the decisions I make in the Web3 space and in business at large. And again, I'm going to go back just briefly to something I mentioned earlier, which is me advocating for the businesses that I advise to define their values, their vision, and their mission so that people can align with them. The reason why I wanted to define my own purpose, which is another word for values, if in that construct in terms of vision, mission, and values, your purpose is your why. I wanted to make sure that the work I was doing was in alignment to who I am at my core. And if you're an organization, defining your values are important because it is how it will be hugely influential to the people that you bring onto the team and to the products that you build. Your values will permeate everything. The same as how my values or my purpose permeates all the work that I do. So that's it. My next steps now are to build my how and my what. In other words, how do I actually go about, uh, you know, facilitating my purpose? And then what am I doing specifically to move the needle forward with my purpose and the business that I build and the products that I launch as well. And if we're to go as far back as what sparked my interest in defining my why, remember at the top of the conversation here, the chat, I said I was trying to find out why I was not as enthusiastic and why I was not as motivated in building Mosaic as I was when I first started. And that's because it's only two of us. It's a very small, group. But there are, I think, gaps in terms of the people that can join this project so that I can then become the facilitator that I was born to be for this project as well. Meaning, some of the roles that I'm doing are not in alignment to my purpose. Some of the tasks that are expected of me, right, because it's a team of two, are not what it makes me enthusiastic. And to ask myself to do that work is actually detrimental to me and the project. So understanding my why allows me to be a better founder too, and allows me to double down on some of the initiatives that I've already got going, like Crypto Sapiens. And like I mentioned, there's Eureka John in the audience who he knows the conversations we've had as far as its purpose as a platform for individuals to become the best version of themselves, right? And for projects that come through and have a platform to share what they're building to become the best versions of themselves too. So I'm going to cut it off there, and anybody who wants to come up, raise your hands or ask questions. And I'm going to answer some of the questions that came through already. So I'm going to look to see if there's any requests. No requests yet. You can raise your hand to come up. One of the early questions here was from Bills. First of all, thank you, Bills, for creating this wonderful product that is Abura. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. And for giving me the opportunity to create a space to talk about this. So the question that Bills asked is, what motivates you? And hopefully I answered that by talking about my purpose. But what motivates me is the ability to help people become better at what they do. So when first of all, people need to be motivated themselves for me to be able to help them, right? You can't come in and expect help without helping yourselves. So if someone is really trying both to become, a better contributor or a better producer or a better host or a better editor, just talking specifically about Crypto Sapiens, my job that makes me extremely happy is to help them find all the resources necessary, right? So to help provide them all the resources necessary to then become the best version of that. Hopefully that answered the question. Anybody else want to come up and chat, or I can cut this? Oh, there's Obo1 trying to come up. What's up, Obo1?
Hey, what's up, Humpty? It's Over One, but also Alpha from Green Pill.
Oh, dope. What's up?
What's up? What's up? Not much. Just nice to hear you speak and talk about like your why and your journey. That was very nice.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming up, and I appreciate you listening. And I don't know, so to talk specifically about Green Pill, right? Since you're up here and you brought it up, Green Pill is this initiative that's always been near and dear to my heart, primarily because it was driven by one person that is, at least started initially by one person who has been influential to me and the impact I seek to make. And, that's Kevin Iwaki, and the work over at Gitcoin as an organization to me is incredibly important and relevant, meaningful, valuable, through all the adjectives. And so when Green Pill started and I read, the regenerative crypto economics book, like it just really hit. And so me coming in to Green Pill, the Discord server, me advocating for a Green Pill channel, even though sometimes I challenge things to be a devil's advocate, um, those things are because I wish to facilitate whatever I can to make that as successful an endeavor as possible.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I kind of have the same perspective too on Green Pill. Very much inspired by like Owaki and the discussions he would have with different individuals and like kind of the regen space. Especially like the Meta Crisis was, one of the best kind of series. I think they still have a couple episodes to truly finish it out, but I love that as well. But yeah, like for me, being more kind of as the engineer, I kind of, you know, fashion myself as like kind of a product engineer in a lot of ways, to where I could think of ideas and kind of create product around it, but also could then engineer and create them. So I very much look at green pills like um, a way to like kind of connect people of different interests, and that's so I've been working on like the Dev Guild, and as you know, also like LA chapter. But that's something too. Like I'd love to talk to you about like maybe more one on one about like how LA could be more active and get more involved in like different public good actions because you seem to be very active in the community in LA. But yeah, just a couple thoughts.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the community in LA. One initiative that I started almost at the same time as Crypto Sapiens, if not just like a month or two before, is DAO LA. And DAO LA was an experiment in coordination in the real world with people who cared about DAOs and wanted to, kind of share their stories about DAOs. And, at the very beginning, we were incredibly uh, successful. I would say, I mean, if you look at our meetup page, still to this day, we have nearly 1,000 members. So I still pay for that as a public good because I don't want to disband that group of people that came together there. And I still would like to reactivate that at some point. We haven't hosted a meetup in like half a year, but I did offer it to Green Pill. I did offer it to Farcaster as a way to organize these different groups, maybe together, maybe separately, to talk about, the narratives that matter to these, individuals and organizations. So TBD when that's going to reopen, but it will reopen in some way where we can host, hundreds of people in Los Angeles through, you know, facilitated, I should say, by these different organizations. Because I am bullish on Green Pill and I'm bullish on Farcaster, and I love to see that they've come together as well.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that, like, because I started really using Farcaster more the past couple of weeks, especially now that we have like a Green Pill channel that really brought me over. But I definitely see like, for example, the LA channel, just like very active, and just because the fact that like Farcaster is still very like niche and a small community, it's just so much easier to like really communicate with people. And I see like a lot, like you said, I can see a lot of synergy around like kind of coordinating meetups and events through Farcaster for Green Pill stuff, and things like of that nature. Yeah, definitely something we could talk about more. Because like yeah, like I feel like there's a lot in LA, like because currently like the Green Pill, and just a little context, like there's Green Pill Network, which is just different chapters throughout the world in different locations from like Nigeria, Germany, India, and all these different chapters are focused on like their specific regions and how they could bring public good and regen tools to these communities with like quadratic funding. So with LA being kind of more kind of the issues in this region at large, and you could say Southern California, is around like homelessness, housing, food of that nature. And there's also a lot of culture and a lot of things that California is doing positive around the environment and stuff like that that could also be exported to different chapters. So that's kind of like I see the potential in LA, and yeah, I'd love to see more collaboration with Farcaster and stuff in the future.
So, anybody else want to come up? I want to make sure that I. Oh, it looks like Kusho requested. Sorry about that. I didn't notice. Come on up.
GM, can you hear me? Hi, man. It's great to be here. I loved hearing your story. I was hearing it while I was eating, so that was pretty enjoyable. I mean, you know, for some like dinner kind of blues, reminiscing about my childhood while eating some nice rice and suya. But anyways, um, yeah, I loved the story. I feel like similar to you, I remember very much some parts. I have a very, very vague memory of my past, but there are certain people in my past, like in my teachers, like kindergarten teachers. I remember Auntie Anne and some other teachers that we remember, and usually because of, like you said, the amount of attention that they pay towards your growth and towards the things that you have to say, even from as early as primary school. So it's like, what am I saying as a 6-year-old that is really worth listening to as an adult? But they still pay that much attention any which way. Um, I wanted to ask, like, for you as an individual, as a founder, as a builder, what would you say your environment, as in the exact location of where you are brought up or where you grew up, how would you say that has impacted you in terms of the way you think about things and the way you um pay attention or determine ascribe values to certain things?
That's a good question in terms of like trying to, because I can tell you exactly some of the things that I was involved in at a young age, um, that were influenced by my environment. Um, I'm trying to figure out how to connect that to the second part of your question, but I'll just start and then maybe together we can figure out the second part of it together. Um, I grew up in a neighborhood that is very urban, Los Angeles, born and raised. Right, I've moved away a few times, but I keep coming back. Um, and there was a couple of different cultures that were very strong in my community, and that means my neighborhood directly, but also the schools that I went to. One of those was graffiti, another one is skateboarding, and another one was breakdancing. I was a member of those three different communities growing up, meaning I packed my backpack with spray cans, and we used to go, writing on walls, hopefully more creatively than just scribbles and trash, though I'm sure people weren't very appreciative of that. But that's part of my history. There's no denying it. Um, I did get better creatively, and then I started doing paid murals when I got older. So I know that influenced even some of my early professional endeavors, which was to be a muralist based on my experience with graffiti as a kid. The other, skateboarding, I grew up in a neighborhood where that was probably our only outlet, was to go skate, um, because there just was no way of paying for any other kind of entertainment. So I remember on the weekends, primarily because we were going to school during the week, but on the weekends, my friends and I, we used to roll like 14 deep. So we were not a small crew by any means. Used to grab our skateboards. We were based out of downtown LA, and we would skate all the way to Venice Beach. For anybody who's familiar with LA, that is not a close, you know, um, trip. It is several dozen miles long, and so it would take us the whole day. But we had our spots where we would skate, and then we would take the bus back home, and that was our day, and it was great. I have a lot of really fond memories of my friends and even injuries that I took because of some crazy tricks that I was trying to do off of long stair gaps and rails. Um, and lastly was like breakdancing, and that was more of like my late middle school or early high school years. I got really into the breakdancing scene. There were some kids in those schools who were really good, and I was always a bit of a nerd and an outcast. And so if you notice, like the communities I was a part of, from graffiti to skateboarding, and even breakdancing, I would say would be considered, outcast communities. They're not the in crowd. They're not the cool kids, usually, at least not then. But I got into breakdancing, which is probably one of the coolest things I did, in terms of the people that were in that group. And yeah, I actually, I used to watch a lot of videos of breakdancers in New York and try to learn their styles. And so I would say, to this day, those things influence my choice of art. Those things influence my choice of graphic design, videography, like video styles, um, and dancing. Like I'm actually, hopefully, enrolling my kid in a hip hop and, contemporary dance, because she looks like she's breakdancing when she dances, and I was like, well, why not? So even as a parent, it influences, the way that I, parent and make decisions for my child. So I don't know if that answered your question.
That was a great answer, man. I really enjoyed that. I was literally laughing when you mentioned how you'd skate a very huge distance, just for fun, and how breakdance was the coolest thing you ever did. I mean, I'm terrible, horrible, deplorable at dancing. Like, oh my god. Well, that's a great story. I had another question, which is what I'm trying to think about, which is like, okay, yeah, I remember. So I wanted to ask, in terms of um kind of like your values and the people and places and things that contributed to your values in general, do you think there's anything from your past that kind of is a bit of a limitation, or restricts the things that you do as a founder now? Because I think about it from the lens of being a Nigerian, for example, and you grow up around certain certain ways of thinking, and you kind of adopt that as like the normal thing. So what happens then is that you have a way of thinking that doesn't come from you independently, it comes from your background, your environment, and all that, but also affects you in terms of the way you associate with certain things going forward.